Hi, I'm Kathy Moore, and this is Steps in a Journey. This is a class on the spiritual life in which we journey together to the eternal life. And our journey is a quest to figure out, try to understand, and then respond to the life asked of us of Jesus Christ. We've been talking about prayer, and that's part of our quest, and part of our journey is praying. And we've been discussing this book, The Spiritual Combat by Scupoli, Dom Lorenzo Scupoli, and he wrote about this book in the 1500s, and it was a pocket book of St. Francis de Sales. And he writes on how it is to be in the perfect life. But first of all, I want to start out with a story. I went into the church in California to pray, and some of us had a key because it was a mission church, but we had the Blessed Sacrament there in the church. So I went into, and as I was going in through the door, I heard an ice cream truck go. You know, the little bell ringing, whatever that little tune is. And we lived in, way in the boonies, in the mountain valley. We didn't have an ice cream truck come by very often. And I said, oh, wow, an ice cream truck. Would I ever like an ice cream bar? But the person didn't see anybody, and so whoever was driving the ice cream truck just went zooming by, and it said on the side of the truck, Sharon's ice cream for kids. And I thought, oh, nuts, it's for kids. And I'm a stickler for rules. I says, here I'm an adult, so it's not for me. But I couldn't have waved them down anyway if I ignored the rules. But I said, I sure would like an ice cream bar. So anyway, I went in and prayed, and I got in my prayer that I should go to my friend Marilyn's, and pray for her. So after I prayed for a while, I headed for home. And when I got home, I called Marilyn and said, and she says, oh, you went into prayer. And she says, what did God tell you to do? And I said, he said to go to you and pray for you. And she says, oh, goody. She says, I'm at my mom's right now, but she says, I'll be home in about, by the time you get here, I'll be home. Well, she lived in the next town over, about 20 minutes away. So I drove out to her house, and we prayed together. And then after prayer, she said, would you like a popsicle? And I said, well, sure, I'd like a popsicle. And then she said, she went to her freezer, and what did she do? She pulled out an ice cream bar. And she said, well, she was on the way home, and she drove by the grocery store, and into her mind came, buy Kathy an ice cream bar. And so she stopped and she picked up an ice cream bar for me to have. And I said, thank you, Lord. And I told her about the ice cream truck going by the church and wishing I had an ice cream bar. And the Lord answers prayers in ways that we, I would not have thought of that as a prayer, and yet he answered it, and grants us these blessings, these graces. nothing's a coincidence. In all parts of your life, I've had so many desires answered and come true. I've always wanted to live on a ranch. I always wanted to have horses, and I wanted 2 boys. And that I got that. I got to live on a ranch. I got to have, at one point I had 4 horses at one time, and another time, I had 2 boys. I'm recording this on Zoom, and I'm going to reach over here and mute the participants so their background noise isn't coming through. They'll have to unmute it when we're all done. So we finished. So, but this is, in the spiritual life, the things that He has given us are weapons. One is know that you are nothing. You cannot do anything without God. His thoughts, His love thoughts for you hold you in existence. He's given you the talents. He's given you your dreams. He's given you the way to accomplish things, the ideas in your mind. He takes care of you. But you're nothing without Him. And 2, our second weapon is God is everything. He's created the world. He's created us. And if you just study the human body and how it can heal itself, it is just amazing, all the things that just make up a human body, and the fact that I almost had my thumb cut off, and yet the doctor could fix it, put it together, and then God healed it and had the pieces grow back together. Before we started Zooming, we were talking about our fears, and one fear is the fear of blood. But my friend had, wasn't really a bloody thing, but my friend had her thumb. She lost her thumb. She had it. She was leading another horse to take it someplace to train the second horse, and she had her hand around the saddle horn, but she also had the lead rope around her thumb. And she went through a gate, and the horse that was being led did not go through the gate, and so it stopped. And when the rope tightened up from it stopped, it just snapped her thumb off. Well, I drove her to the hospital, but at the hospital was, an hour away, and then they didn't do anything right away, and I also didn't put the thumb on ice. So then they told us to drive to Redding, which was another hour away, and they still sat us for a couple hours, and so by the time, of course by this time the thumb was in ice as soon as we got it to the hospital. But she lost the skin around the thumb, but the bone they saved, and they put it back on, and then your tummy fat comes in handy, because that's where she had her arm and her thumb attached to inside of her tummy there, the muscle and the fat, to grow a new thumb. And this is amazing. She had a new thumb grow to that bone, and it was very large, and she had to have several operations to whittle it down, and still at the end, when she says that's enough, it was still a huge thumb. But just the amazement that that thumb is very important to what we can do with whatever we do. Hanging on to things, the thumb is very important, and yet, God had the thumb grow on. So if we keep this in mind, that God is everything. God is the one that heals. God is the one that gives us our dreams and our desires. God is the one that gives us our talents. And also, if He puts you in the ministry that you don't have the talent for, He helps you. He gives you the energy. He guides you in what you're to do. He calls the unqualified and then qualifies the called. So he'll take care of you. And so that's the second weapon we have, is to realize this and have it. It's part of you, not just in your mind, but in your heart, in the very marrow of your bones. Is God will provide. God is the King of the universe. God is the creator of the universe. And then the third weapon we have is prayer, and that's what that's what we're studying, is how to be perfect in the eyes of, not only in the eyes of God, but so we can attain heaven in a perfect way. So you know about the virtues, and that's what we're working on. If you get the Magnificat, each week or each day, I don't know how often it is, they talk about a saint in which how they practice the various virtues, the various virtue of patience and loyalty and courage. So this book by Dom Scupoli talks about how to practice the virtues. So if you have an impulse to go against the virtues, you have to check it immediately so that your will does not give its consent to them. And one of these is like anger, impatience, which you see so often in today's society, the anger, and yet these people have not seen it, haven't checked it. They haven't noticed it in themselves. Lots of times they will, shout at you in Facebook, and then you say, well, quit shouting at me. Where's all this hatred come from? It's like you can almost see them take aback, and they said, they notice it for the first time how angry they are. And of course they will deny it, but you've pointed it out to them, and they will think about it. Because if you give in to them, you're going to have a greater setback, in which you're still, if you give in to anger, if you give in to this hatred, it'll continue to grow. And then you start thinking, what's your trial that made you so angry? I remember when I first moved in with Sister Mary Matthew, she said something that really upset me. And so I went into the chapel. That was one of the perks of living with a nun, is to have a chapel right there in the Blessed Sacrament, so you can really feel close to God. And I sat down there and I said, Lord, why did what the sisters say to me make me so angry? And into my mind, which is how God speaks to us, I got the memory of when I was a child. And someone said the same thing to me in the same tone of voice. So I thought, well, does Sister think that I'm a child? Well, the answer is no. Well, does the Sister think I'm stupid? And I had to say no. So I had to go through a process of forgiving that incident of when I was a child, forgiving that person that hurt me and said that original thing that when Sister said it, it triggered my hurt. And that hurt responded into anger. So the next thing you have to do is, when you have an inclination of anger or whatever against your virtues you're practicing on, is to go against that. So with this example of that, you have to stop the anger. You have to stop the impatience with the other person. So unless you can reason with it, sometimes you can't stop it. But since I took the time to take it before the Lord and reason with it, I was able to stop it. And then, okay, fine. And the tempter, who is the devil, then lets us go for a while. Oh, okay. I'm not angry anymore with what she says, until he tests us again. So we're constantly being tested. And the Lord permits these testing to grow in our patience, to grow in our calmness, so that we don't get angry over what somebody says. So when you recognize your anger and you recognize, well, here it is rising again, then you want to please God. So you don't want to be angry. And so we try to keep fighting against this anger and whatever comes up. This is our test. This is our battle for the day. That's why it's called spiritual combat. It's because we're constantly fighting against our temptations. There's there might be, we're inclined, say we're with a negative person, and we're inclined then to join their negativity, their pessimism. We're inclined to join their gossip or putting people down. And also, with all this anger all around us, we're inclined to join it. And that's what you want, to equip your soul with virtue and habitual sanctity and perpetual acts of virtue, so that we can fight this negativity, the fight to join people in gossip, the fight against putting people down. Sometimes people don't even realize that they are putting people down. But and this was way back in the early 80s or in the 80s. My son got an assignment at school to take a piece of paper and watch a TV show and put a check mark after every put down that they hear. And he chose the movie, the sitcom Night Court. And I said, that's a pretty good movie. He's not going to put down very many check marks. And to my surprise, there he sat, putting down the check marks. So I started paying attention to the movie. And who was putting the put downs? The judge, the hero of the movie, was making all these put downs. And then if you watch 30 minutes of that, and they say a put down every minute, you've watched 30 put downs in that length of time, followed by canned laughter. And the next thing you know is it's coming out of your mouth, the put downs. This is a major sin of the day, is these put downs, and they go right to the spirit. Right to the spirit. And they've ruined more marriages because of put downs. And then whoever's doing the put down, when the person indicates that they're hurt, they'll say, "What's the matter? Can't you take a joke?" And it's not a joke. We've grown up with the word "sticks and stones can break our bones, but words can never harm them." They cannot harm the bones, but they certainly can destroy and shatter a heart. And it takes a lot longer to heal a broken heart than it does to heal broken bones. And it's always someone close to us, someone we love or feel very close to, that hurts us. If a person in Russia said these same things to us, we'd care less. But when it's somebody that we're close to, that we respect, and they say cruel and mean things to you, it goes right to your heart and shatters it. And it may take years to heal. And that relationship is usually never fixed again. It's almost takes a miracle to fix a broken relationship of a shattered heart. And these are all from put downs. So with our 3 weapons that we're going to use to fight against impatience: distrust of oneself, confidence in God. Oh, there's 4 of them. Excuse me, I missed one. The proper use of our faculties of the body and mind, and prayer. And we have to go and perform acts directly opposite that virtue. If we just say, "Oh, I'm going to have other virtues," that doesn't fix the problem of impatience. "Oh, I'm loyal," but you're impatient. "I am courageous," but you're impatient. So you have to, having other virtues does not fix your problem of what you have. You have to fight against this impatience. For when a person is impatient, they dread the contempt of another person, or they are impatient because they are fond of the applause of other people. And because of this, because they aren't applauded but rather put down, then they become angry and impatient. Anger and impatience is almost one with this author, meaning if you're impatient, usually anger is shown by your impatience. If you stopped at a red light, you show your impatience by your anger. You might, the car in front of you isn't moving immediately, so you blow on the horn. Or you we are taught as Catholics that we have venial sins and mortal sins. Venial sins are little light offenses, and a mortal is a major one. So a venial sin would be taking $1 out of your mother's purse. A mortal sin would be a major thing of robbing a bank. A venial sin is putting down a person, say your spouse, putting the person down. A mortal sin is really putting down the President of the United States. People don't realize that they are committing a mortal sin by offending and threatening the life of a major person in politics. The greater the person in power, the greater the sin of offense it is. And so they say, well, don't do, when you continue to do a lot of minor sins without checking, then they grow into a major sin. So people might think nothing of saying put-downs to their kids and their spouses, and so therefore when it's repeated over and over again and it just comes out of their mouth, they think nothing of doing the same thing with putting down the President of the United States. And the same, so sins, that's why they say go to confession, even though your venial sins can be forgiven by going to Mass. They can be forgiven by giving alms. They can be forgiven in many ways. But they still say go to confession and try to stop doing these little ones because they grow into a major thing. And the same thing is with virtues. If you want it to grow, you have to keep repeating it over and over again to have it grow. You want it to be a habit. I think, I can't remember the exact number, but I know it's like you have to repeat something like 10, 20 times for it to become a habit. Lots of times if you take up smoking, it's not the first cigarette that in which you become addicted to cigarettes. It's repeating it over and over again that you become addicted. Well, the same thing is becoming virtuous in your to be adept at the virtue that you want to practice in. So if somebody has upset you and you've become impatient and angry at this person, your response should be to speak with greater charity toward that person, greater mildness in answer to those who have injured you, no matter how great the offense was. You even turn around and help that person to the best of your ability. If they've harmed you, if they've broken your heart, your response is to help them in any way you can and to be kind and gentle to them. And although these acts may seem insignificant and maybe even repugnant to you, do not omit them. However small that they may seem, your little smile to them, your offer to help them, they will help support you in the struggle of obtaining that virtue of eliminating impatience and anger from your life. And it will contribute to your victory over defeating those vices. And so, guard your mind. Think about these things. Again, in 40 weeks series, It asks you to spend 15 minutes a day. Bishop Sheen spent an hour a day in adoration, or just sitting in prayer, whether here before the Blessed Sacrament or not, in which you go over what you've done. How have you responded in a certain situation? And don't give up because you lost the battle for that day. Oh, I shouldn't have responded that way. So, mortify your inclinations. That means practice things that go against your nature to become strong. And that's why we practice Lent and not eating meat on Friday, even though the church no longer makes that a rule of not eating meat on Friday. It is also a good mortification of giving something up, at least one day out of the week. And during Lent, giving up something that will make you stronger. A sister would give the example of, if you like cream and sugar in your coffee, drink it black for Lent. Don't say a word to anybody. Just say, oh, I just take my coffee black, thank you. And just mortify yourself, and that way, when the things get really tough, you're able to conquer that. It's people who have camped out in the outdoors in the wintertime, if when they grow up that way and then they enter the service, they're more prepared to go through the rigors of boot camp than the guys that have never given up anything in their whole life. And we are in a battle. We are in a battle, and this is why it's called spiritual combat. We're fighting for our souls to be the best they can be. It says, if you follow other methods, however excellent you consider them, though that you taste the greatest spiritual delights, though you imagine yourself intimately united to God, you can depend on this. You will never acquire solid virtue, nor know what true spirituality is. And this is not, as has been shown in the beginning, consist in acts that are agreeable or pleasant to our nature, but true spirituality are doing those acts that crucify our nature and our irregular actions. So in this way, man or woman, renewed by their acquired virtue, unites himself completely to God, our Creator and our crucified Savior. Vicious habits are contracted by several acts of the will because we've yielded to the sensual appetites. It's just the sensual appetites. It's just natural that when someone puts us down, for us to be angry, and we're fighting against this natural tendency of anger and hatred in response. So evangelical perfection is attained by repeated acts of the will, conforming ourselves to the will of God, who moves it to practice different virtues at different times. The will incurs no guilt unless it gives consent to the temptation. Sister would say 1,000 temptations is not a sin unless we respond to it and act upon these temptations. But on the other hand, the will cannot be sanctified and united to God. however strong the grace is that's attracting it, unless it cooperates with that grace by interior acts, by your heart, and if necessary, by exterior acts. So what comes from your heart is more important than your exterior acts, but your exterior acts should come from what's inside your heart. So, unless you are first interiorly wanting to please God, if you don't have that interior desire, then you could go to 3 masses a day. You could spend hours in church. You could say 7 rosaries a day. But these are all exterior acts. And the important thing is having it in your heart. Loving God first and doing it out of the will. I want to do the will of God first. And this is writing the exact same thing as what God told St. Catherine of Siena, and she wrote it down in the book Dialogue. And the Lord said, you can offer up all your pain, all your suffering. That's fine. But he says, what I really want is your love. So when you offer up your pain and your suffering, first of all, love me. Love me. And you know, when I was first baptized in the Spirit, and I was so full of love with God, and I said, Lord, I want to do something for you. What can I do for you? How do you want me to live? I'll do anything for you. And I'd go into church and pray, Lord, what do you want me to do? And into my mind came, love me. Simply love me. And Sister said the same thing happened to her in Europe. And I forgot which saint. It was a queen anyway, that she went to her castle, and she was in the room which at one time would have been the chapel of this queen. And she went over to maybe the altar was still there, I don't know, but she said, she prayed to that saint. She said, what is your advice to me? And into her mind came, only love matters. And these are all the same thing is happening here is what's in your interior? Why are you wanting to acquire these virtues? Yes, it helps to do the exterior acts. It helps us to grow in our faith. But the first thing should be love in your heart. Lord, I want to please you. I want to do your will. And all these mortifications that he sends you are part of his permitted will. Sometimes your temptations are so overpowering. It seems that you lack the length of strength to resist any longer. Don't be disheartened. Don't throw down your arms. Defend yourself then and cry out these little ejaculations. I will never surrender to you. I will not submit to you. Because remember, it is the evil one that is tempting you. And say, I will not surrender to you. I will not submit to you. And act like a person who's struggling with an enemy. And you're sword fighting, and you are unable to pierce them with a point, and so you lock arms with them. And when they break free, they want to break free in order to drive home with your full strength and kill the enemy with one fatal blow. And this teaches you to withdraw. Withdraw so that you could come back with more strength. And that's withdraw into prayer. Withdraw into yourself. Just like when Sister said those things to me, and I have no idea what she said. I don't remember that. I just remember my reaction. I withdrew from the situation, and I didn't respond to her in anger. I withdrew and went into the chapel and turned to the Lord and said, Lord, show me why I was so angry. And then when you're before the Lord, recall your insignificance, your inability to accomplish anything. And then place yourself complete confidence in the almighty power of God to help you. So you're able, through His grace, to attack and conquer the passions that oppose you. Then you pray, my Lord, my God, Jesus, Mary, do not abandon your soldier. Do not let me be tempted or be conquered by temptation. Do not let me fall into this anger, into this hatred. It right now is just filling the United States, maybe even the world, as forces are tempting us to go against one another, to divide us. And during the times of peace in which you're not tempted, you've turned off the TV so you have times of peace. Call up your understanding to reinforce your will in prayer. Strengthen your understanding with motives that will raise its courage and give it new life for the fight. For example, if you're unjustly accused or harmed in any way, in some way, and in desperation of this, you're tempted to lose all patience. Try to check yourself by reflecting on these points. 1, consider whether you might deserve it. Maybe what the person said was the truth. And in some way, you are to blame. We never like to think that, do we? Who of us? Can't be us that they're talking about. They don't know who we really are. So maybe we deserve what they have said to us. Then if we aren't guilty, we aren't how they have accused us of, maybe there is a past offense that we have committed and that the Lord is allowing us to suffer on this point for our purgatory on earth. And so we're suffering through these accusations, these false accusations that someone has put against us, for God has permitted it to go through this. And if that's the case, thank God. Thank you, Lord, for this trial, so that I can go through, I can go directly to heaven, and I don't have to enter purgatory because I'm doing it here on earth. So if you think then that your faults are few, and that you can't recall anything that the Lord needs to punish you for because you've taken care of everything, that you've already done a great amount of penance, just remember that the road to heaven is narrow and it is full of obstacles. And this particular incident is an obstacle. a barrier that you need to overcome, get around on the way to heaven. This is part of steps in a journey, is determining how can we get through this obstacle without losing our cool. We've lost our cool, we're angry, and we want to overcome this temptation of hatred. But even if you could find another road, a burning love for the Lord should ask you not to consider it. Because for the Son of the living God and all the saints after him, they took no other road than the thorny path of the cross. And so we offer it up and we accept it, the cross that the Lord has put before us. And what you should keep in mind at all of this and at all times is the will of God. He loves you so tenderly. And he's delighted in every heroic act of virtue that you perform. And when you turn to him with faithfulness and courage, you turn with faithfulness and courage to his immense love. He loves you for it. Remember also that the most unjustly that you suffer, and consequently the more grievous your affliction, the greater is your merit in the sight of God. For in the midst of your suffering, you adore his judgments and willingly submit to his divine providence, which draws good from the greatest evil and makes the malice of our enemies subservient to our eternal happiness. So that's what we turn to God and know that he loves us beyond any human love. He loves us so much that he died for us. He loved us so much he died for us when we didn't even know him. In our sinfulness, he died for us. And that's, we just embrace ourselves with that and try to overcome. And that's why it's a battle, because it's a constant fighting, not to give in to this impatience, not to give in to this anger. In order to gain victory over self and attain the necessary virtues, we must not be content to exhibiting our courage just one time. It's necessary to return to battle often, especially when we love ourselves so much. We constantly have to fight self-love and pride. And so therefore, what we need to do is judge as our friends those from whom we receive the most cruel and mortifying injuries. That is really hard to do. Is those who bug us the most. And oftentimes I see in Facebook little one-liners saying, get rid of the friends who are negative. And yet maybe these negative friends need someone in their lives to draw out the positive, to show them the positive things in life. Fight there with great determination. Do not let the weakness of your nature be an excuse. If your strength fails you, ask more of God. He will not refuse your request. Consider this, if the fury of your enemies is great and their numbers are overwhelming, the love which God holds for you is infinitely greater. The angel who protects you and the saints who intercede for you are more numerous than your enemies. All he asks of you is that you defend yourself courageously, and that despite your wounds that you may receive, you never lay down your arms or leave the battleground. Do not shirk your duty. This war is unavoidable, and you must either fight or die. The obstinacy of your enemies is so fierce that arbitration and peace with them is utterly impossible. And here he's talking about the enemy of what is causing you to be angry, what is causing you to lose your patience. Right now, you see it all over you. This bombarding you with the causes to become angry, to give in. And so, just depend on God and depend on His love for you, and He will give you all that you need to overcome every temptation that you might have. We'll stop there, and we'll discuss more on this spiritual combat next week. Thank you, and God bless you.